Hello guys, welcome back. Today, this is the first part of a 4-part series where I look at every single NHL division and predict the standings for this next NHL season. Now, I know I'm late when it comes to the predictions for every single division. I wanted to make sure that most of the rosters were finalized. I want to make sure that most of the trades were done and were a done deal this past week. We saw Erik Karlsson traded, so there are still stuff happening, but I am going to start predictions now. So, of course, I'm starting with the Atlantic Division. We're probably going to go with the Metro Division next, and the Central Division, of course, at last but not least, we're probably going to talk about the Pacific. Now, the Atlantic Division can go a lot of different ways, so I want to hear from you guys first. What do you think this division will look like, and how do you think it'll shape up? Which will be the best team in the division, and which will be the worst team in the division? Now, to start off, at number 8, I have the Detroit Red Wings. I predict them to be the worst team in the league, and I predict them to have 59 points on the dot. For me, Detroit just has a lot of different problems, and it didn't get any better this past season. Yes, they'll likely be adding Filip Zadina this next season, which will definitely help them in their youth category. They've added in Jonathan Bernier to that goaltending tandem, but to me, the loss of Henrik Zetterberg won't just be felt on the ice, it'll be felt off the ice. I feel like that's a huge blow to the Detroit Red Wings, and even though he didn't have the best season last season, he was second in points on the team, and he was definitely one of the main contributors on the power play in the overall game of the Detroit Red Wings. I feel like that will be felt all over the ice, not just off it. Henrik Zetterberg is a huge loss to an already weak forward group, and of course you gotta talk about that terrible defense. It's one of the worst in the league. So many old guys, it's not getting any younger, and it's looking to be the oldest team in the league right now, which will obviously, in today's NHL, not get you anywhere. I feel like Jimmy Howard will maybe have a better season than he did last season. Hopefully he's healthy, but I just see Bernier also coming back down to earth. He was fantastic with Colorado, but I don't see that continuing with Detroit. Overall, this team is, while it's getting younger, it kind of had to because it was just so old, it was getting kind of ridiculous. For me, while the future might be bright for Detroit, it's not going to happen for a while. They got a lot of bad contracts on that team that will affect them for the next few years. I see that continuing this next season, where it likely will be a transitioning year where we see more youthful players, but I don't know if that'll translate to more success in the now. I feel like it'll be more of a disaster type season, but hey, there's more of a chance of Jack Hughes, which would save their season and would save their team. And overall, there are a couple of bright spots in Detroit, but I don't think that youth and that success will come for a while. I think the best is ahead of them, and I feel like right now it's going to be one of those years where they're going to throw it in for a better future and hopefully a high draft pick. At number 7, I have the Ottawa Senators. I predict them to get 75 points this last season. Last season, they got 67 points, and this next season, I do see it being better for them. I know that's a hot take, but I don't think it's as disastrous as people may think. But I feel like there are some factors with the team that simply can't be worse than they were last season. For me, one of the biggest things that had the downfall of the Ottawa Senators last season was the goaltending. Craig Anderson had one of the worst years of his career, if not the worst year of his career. It was absolutely atrocious. Even though he's like a 37-year-old goaltender, I do see him being a lot better next season, rebounding and being better. He is not a sub-800 goaltender. He's much better than that. I think Mike Condon is better than that too. And while the defense, of course, might be even worse with Erik Karlsson, I think the goaltending alone will be tons better than it was last season. While that defense might be worse without Erik Karlsson, I think it's kind of a little bit underrated. I feel like Thomas Chabot can go into a top 2 type role right off the bat. I think he's fantastic, and this next season he could really break out. There are some players on that team that aren't bad players, and I think will be decent. I think that defense is going to be bad, but I also see that offense rising up even more. Of course, hopefully they'll have a full season of Mark Stone healthy and ready to go. It'll definitely boost their offense completely. And Matt Duchene, I think, is a fantastic player. He had a brilliant second half. It was amazing. If he can stay consistent next season, he'll definitely be a number 1 center for them. Of course, there aren't many other options. They did lose some depth, of course, with Pajot being injured for 6 months. That's a huge blow to their team. But honestly, some guys bringing up, maybe Brady Tkachuk plays this next season. There are some players that are very talented on the squad that did have down years that I think will get back to where they were last season and the year before that. And again, while Ottawa might be the most screwed team in the NHL, I don't think they're going to perform as bad as they did last season. I do see some things improving, and of course, while you did trade Erik Karlsson, I don't know if it's that big of a blow to their now and their present that I think people do believe. I think the Ottawa Senators will be doing better next season, and to say that they're the worst team in the league, I think would just be too easy. The NHL is a lot more wacky than that. And of course, that's completely fine if you think Ottawa will be the worst team in the league. It's the likeliest answer there. It's the likeliest possibility. But I think it's just too easy to predict Ottawa to be last. I think that they will be better in some aspects, and we'll probably raise them in the points marker. Again, I don't see them being good at all, but I do see them being better. At number 6, I have the Montreal Canadiens, them getting 80 points this season. That's a 9-point jump from last season where they got 91. And to me, kind of like Ottawa, I can't see how they get any worse than they did last season. And again, it comes back to that goaltending. Carey Price cannot be worse than he did last season. 900 save percentage in the games that he played is hands down the worst season that he ever had. He'll definitely rebound, and he'll definitely be a lot better. He probably won't be a Vezina-like goaltender, but I think he'll be a lot more solid than he was last season. And then, just alone, I think will raise their points overall. Carey Price is probably the most talented goalie in the league still, and while I had that down year, I believe he'll be a lot better. And that defense is going to be very interesting. Jeff Petrie, one of the more underrated defensemen in the league, will still be there and still be playing great. You got Victor Mete, who could factor into a top 4 role if he does so choose. And of course, you got Shea Weber out 4 months, which will be a big blow to this team. But by the time he's back, I think the team will start to get a little bit better because of that. Shea Weber is still a great defenseman, and by the time he's healthy, we can see Montreal kind of going on the upswing. Still not being a playoff team, but I see them being set better in that second half. And of course, that offense, I can't really justify that offense at all. I don't see that forward group being good at all. Of course, you got Brendan Gallagher, who's a fantastic guy. I see Drew probably being better in the points marker next season. But of course, losing Max Pacioretty, whether he had a bad season or not, that's a huge blow to them. And I think they have some depth guys, but it won't be enough to really bolster that offense too much. I see that offense being likely worse than last season, but not too much. Max Pacioretty will hurt, but that offense, that forward core is still pretty bad. And yes, 9 points is a pretty big jump in today's NHL, but I think that'll be mostly attributed to Carey Price being so much better than he was, that in just that alone, I think they'll be a lot better. Sabres with 93 points. I predict them to be very, very solid in this next season. Of course, last season they got 62 points, was the worst team in the league, and it just was a disaster for them. But this next season, they've made some moves this past offseason, and of course, getting Rasmus Dahlin, things will definitely change, and for the better. To start out, I feel Rasmus Dahlin will be a top 4 type guy, and by the time the season is ended, he'll be playing like a top 2 defenseman. He's that good and is their franchise guy for the future on that defensive core, and Rasmus Dahlin ain't bad at all. That defense really had bad years all around defensively, and this next season there will be some rebounders. I feel like Scandella will be a lot better, Jake McCabe possibly being a lot better. That defense has a ton of potential. Last season we really didn't see it, but this next season I can see a ton of those guys rebounding for rounding out a much better defensive core. Forward group got a lot better this season. Jeff Skinner is a huge add to that team, and if he plays with Jack Eichel, watch out. That's going to be a dynamic duo. Of course, you got Connor Sheary, who will not be bad at all. He's a former Penguin and had some good seasons there. So overall, I feel like the offense will be boosted. Casey Mittelstadt is my Calder favorite, so I think that he'll have a big season. Jack Eichel could likely be a Hart candidate if the Buffalo Sabres are close to the playoffs, and if he's healthy. This team has gobs of potential, and on the offense, on the forward group, it still has a lot of potential. Some of those guys could come in like Alex Nylander and play well, and they got some great young prospects that could factor in. The big question mark, though, is, of course, with that goaltending. You got Carter Hutton and you got Linus Ullmark, and while, of course, Carter Hutton was fantastic in the games that he played with St. Louis, it could be another Scott Darling situation in Carolina. Will he be able to factor into that starter role at age 32? There are some big questions there with Carter Hutton, so I'm not completely sold on that duo of Carter Hutton and Ullmark. That's why I'm not predicting them to make the playoffs, but I think they'll be a lot better this next season, having a 21 or a 31 jump, and I feel like by then they'll be a fair good team, just not quite to be able to get over that hump. At number 4, I have the Boston Bruins with 94 points, a point above the Buffalo Sabres, but the difference is Boston will make the playoffs, in my opinion. They'll be the worst team to make the playoffs, but they'll still scrape in pretty much this year's Colorado Avalanche, where it could come to the last day where they make the playoffs. While this team is solid, I don't have too much hope that they'll continue what they had last season. They got 112 points, were a fantastic team, but I don't know if I see that continuing this next season. Still making the playoffs, but I do see them having a little bit of more weaknesses, especially on that defense. Chara will likely age a little bit more. I don't know if Charlie McAvoy will be as good. There are some question marks with the team. Will Tuukka Rask be able to continue that? And I really, on the goaltending side of things, I have zero faith in Yaroslav Halak to do anything worth. While Tuukka Rask is getting older, he's certainly still solid on the defense. I feel like it will be decent. There are some guys that are coming up and playing well, but there has been some trade rumors of Krug, and that might slip into the season, which would distract them a little bit. In my opinion, trade rumors around certain defensemen, trade rumors about certain players do get in their heads and could affect their play. That forward group is very, very good. Arguably the best first line in hockey with Pastrnak, Marchand, and Bergeron. There will be some concerns about health, especially with some of their older players like Krejci, Backus, Bergeron, of course. There were some injuries for them last season, but they still were able to pull through because of their great youth, and the youth was playing well. But to me, I do see them losing that, especially since there was a lot of depth that they lost in the offseason. Having guys like Yarnik who went into Calgary, some guys that just were shed that, while it might not destroy their season, I feel like the depth that they had last season from the Providence Bruins, the guys that were let up, I think they'll lose some of that, which will obviously lose some of their luster, which made them such a great team. Again, I still see the Boston Bruins as a very solid team, a playoff team, but not quite as good as they were last season. At number 3, I have the Florida Panthers with 104 points on the dot. When I'm looking at my predictions, they are by far the best ranked, third-ranked team in their division. They're really, really good, and they got even better this past offseason. Let's just start with that forward group. That top 6 may be one of the best in the league. You got Barkov, Trocheck, Hoffman, Huberdeau. So many solid options. Dadonov ain't bad at all. That top 6 is absolutely lethal. And going into next season, if they're healthy and they all play 82 games, something like that, that offensive core is going to be beastly. And having guys like Henrik Borgstrom, one of the best prospects in the NHL, coming up and playing well, that'll definitely affect their season. And I feel like this forward group is one of the more underrated groups in the NHL. They can do wonders and magic on the ice next season. There are concerns about that defense. It's not the greatest defensive group. They do put up a lot of offense, though. Guys like Yandel are very good offensively. Ekblad, really good offensively. Some of those guys are work magic on the offense, and of course, that's what I think they'll be known for in this next season. The defense, on the defensive side of things, there are some decent guys, but I think it'll be a little bit lackluster. Probably the worst part of the team will be that defense side. I just feel like that'll be a little more on the hush-hush rather than the offense, which will be exploding every single night. For the goaltending, there are some question marks. Roberto Luongo is at a very risky part of his career. He's in his 40s, and he's getting up there in age. I still think he'll be very solid, but the health might be a concern. With James Reimer, he's a solid he's a very, very good backup, but I don't know if he's going to have to be the starter there. That might be a concern for them. I feel like they could be like a Dallas Stars of the 2015-2016 season, where they have so much offense, both in the defense and forward group, but the goaltending might be a little bit lackluster. So I feel like this next season, there will be some question marks. The defense might be put aside, though, for that brilliant offense. But even though it looked pretty bleak a year ago, they had a great 2017-2018 season, and this next season, I feel like it'll be a lot better for them. They'll make the playoffs and make some big strides into a great future. At number 2 in the division, I predict the Tampa Bay Lightning to be in that place with 113 points, exactly as many as they had last season. I see Tampa Bay being a very, very similar team. They didn't really do too much in the offseason. There wasn't too much of value that went away. I mean, there's Chris Kunitz, but there wasn't too much of that core that went away. I think it'll still be a great team, a fantastic team that we've seen them be, but I feel like it'll still be pretty much the exact same team as we saw last season. The defense, I do see being a little bit more consistent, but all in all, I see the offense being pretty much the same exact thing. Kucherov being fantastic, Stamkos being fantastic, Brandon Point likely having an even better season, but I don't see too much flip-flop there. I see it pretty much being almost all the same across the board, and while that is a risky pick, it usually does change a lot for teams. I feel like Tampa is one of those teams that is consistent and will stay consistent this next season to where we see them in pretty much the exact same spot this next season in the standings. And of course, you gotta talk about Andrei Vasilevskiy, the goaltender. I think he'll be even better next season. I see him being a lot more consistent. He was kind of overrated last season. I don't think he was a Vezina type guy, but I do see him being that this next season. I see him getting a better save percentage and hopefully being a lot more consistent throughout the whole season. And with Tampa being my second favorite team, I still think they'll be a very fun team to watch, and hopefully will stay the same because 113 points is very, very good. I think they'll be around what they had last year, of course, with 113 points. Still a very, very fantastic team. And of course, with the process of elimination, you now know that the Toronto Maple Leafs are my number 1 pick to win the Atlantic Division. And of course, there is a gigantic battle with Tampa and Toronto, and I feel like that battle will go to the last week, if not the last day of the season. Tampa and Toronto are two very evenly matched teams, and I feel like that battle for the Atlantic Division will go down to the wire. I see both teams being fantastic, but I do see the Toronto Maple Leafs winning the division just barely. But with 115 points, I predict them to be one of the best teams in the league to be competitive for that President's Trophy race, and I do think that they'll be a better team than they were last season. I see that defense overall improving defensively. There are some questions there, of course. That is probably their worst spot, but I do see it being a little bit more solid. And of course, that offense, they did lose James Van Riemsdyk, they did lose Tyler Bozak, but adding a ton of John Tavares, a franchise-type guy, is going to help them so much in the overall the defensive game and also the offensive game. And let's be honest, while Toronto did lose James Van Riemsdyk, they did lose Tyler Bozak, they have fantastic youth, and they have some guys that definitely contribute to the team coming up for the AHL and coming up through Europe. They have a lot of solid prospects, and they have a lot of solid guys that will come up even next season and play very, very well. Just Andreas Johnson, to name a guy, if he has a full season, he could have a great year on the team. And of course, on the goaltending, one of my favorite goaltenders in the league, Frederik Andersen. I think he's one of the best in the league too. He was fantastic against a pretty med defense last season with Toronto Maple Leafs. I feel like this next season we'll see around the same production from him and probably even better stats because he likely will have a better defense around him. But all in all, I see the Toronto Maple Leafs being the best team in the Atlantic. I see them being the best on paper. Offensively, I don't think there's many teams that are better than that. Defensively, yes, there are some questions, but goaltending as well, I think Frederik Andersen is one of the best goaltenders in the league, and he'll definitely be that next season. There's a lot of bright, shining spots in Toronto, and hopefully this next season, we see them making the playoffs, we see them doing well in the playoffs, and hopefully for the first time in a while, getting past round one. But again, with this Atlantic Division, there's a lot of top-heavy teams, but a lot of meh teams in the bottom, so it really is one of the more interesting divisions in the league to see how it turns out next season. Again, I do predict 4 teams out of the Atlantic to be playoff teams, so now you know for the Metropolitan, I predict 4 teams to make it as well. But of course, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about my predictions, and what are your predictions? Who do you think will win the Atlantic Division, and for the rest of the division, what do you think about the rest of the teams? But once again, this will be a 4-part series, so make sure you catch up on every single division prediction video. And of course, after that, I'll likely be listing the 31 through 1 teams and how they place in standings, and of course, the 2018 playoff predictions. So that's going for it, guys. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you like and subscribe. Again, tell me below what you think about the Atlantic Division, who you think will place where. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.